Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. The transfer window closed. Extremely disappointing in terms of the fact that we didn't bring in any additional attacking reinforcements. And so I just wanted to it's almost like a follow-up video this to the one that I did last night, officially after the window shut. But having had overnight to kind of think of things and see where we're at, I just wanted to just kind of gloss over it, I guess, really. So in terms of the players that were not at the club last season, so this is basically a combination of new signings and one player who was out on loan last season and did not play for Leeds last season. But effectively, when you look at the situation, if we're going to put any positive spin on it, it's a new player for this season. Even though it's not a new player to Leeds United, it's a new player to the squad for the season. So, Lucas Perry in goal, I would say, is an upgrade on the goalkeepers that we've still got from last time. Difficult to say with James Justin, as he's only played a very small amount of time at Leeds so far. Same with Seb Bornau, same with Jakob. So it's very difficult to judge any of those three at the moment. Gabriel Gudmundsson, I think, is a good signing. He could go down as a bit of a dark horse in terms of, who the best signing of the summer would be. I think Gabriel Gudmundsson looks like a very good left back, and certainly a more than capable replacement for Junior Firpo. So I've put Jack Harrison on the right hand side just because you can't put him on the left hand side because you've got Gudmundsson and Okafor. Jack Harrison has come back into the squad after having been out on loan. And I would say one positive and one negative. I'll get the negative out of the way. He needs to improve the accuracy of his crossing and his set pieces. But the positive is that you can see that he's putting in some effort when he comes on the pitch, and he's certainly still got a really good standard of ball control. You can see that when he's in control of the ball, he's he has always been, whilst he's been at Leeds, he's always been a decent technical player. Someone that can control the ball very well. Just needs to improve on that end product. Very much like what we said about Dan James with his pace. That Dan James needed to improve his end product. But he got all the directness and speed that you could wish for in a winger. Same with Harrison, but from a more ball control aspect rather than speed aspect. But again, like Dan James, Jack Harrison needs to vastly improve on the accuracy of his end product. But again, if Farke needed someone that was basically left-footed that could basically cut in and get shots away on his left foot, Harrison could possibly do that. But Harrison is known to be a very left-sided player. He's your old style, hug the touchline and get crosses in with his left foot. That is the way Jack Harrison plays. But maybe could be coached to play on the right hand side with the idea of cutting in on his left. Because I know that Farke likes his wingers to be able to cut in and then shoot on the opposite foot. So maybe that's something Harrison can do. But either way, like it or not like it, Leeds United fans have to accept that Jack Harrison is attempting a bit of a redemption here. He's trying to make it up to the fans. He probably knows deep down that the way that everything has been conducted over the last couple of seasons with himself has not been acceptable. You know, he will know that. So it's down to him now to try and get back into Leeds' good books. And as I say, on the few minutes that he's had for Leeds this season so far, he's not looked bad. He's not looked terrible. So, you know, only time will tell with that one. Midfield, obviously we brought in Sean Longstaff and Anton Stack. Stack's had quite a few minutes so far. Looks good. In the main, looks like he can do a little bit of everything. Longstaff had the game of his, possibly one of the games of his career, playing against his old team Newcastle. Was very good in that match in particular, and that's the majority of the minutes that Sean Longstaff has had at Leeds so far. So again, can't really judge him because there was a little bit of a special occasion for him on that one, you know, playing against his old team so soon after signing for Leeds. We'll see how he gets on against teams that he's got no affiliation to going forward. Noah Okafor, again, we've only seen a very small sample size, like Bjorn now, Justin. You know, we need to see a bit more of him, you know, especially once he gets fully recovered from his injury, and hopefully we see a good left winger there. And then up front, you know, we've brought them both in on free transfers, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Lucas Mecha. Calvert-Lewin, once he gets up to full fitness, you know, you can see there's a striker's instinct there. You can see someone that can certainly get in the right areas. It's just whether he's going to be clinical enough and score enough goals. This to me, you know, he looks about as clinical as what Bamford looked at his worst, you know, when Patrick couldn't score a goal, or took him several attempts to get a goal. And unfortunately at the moment Calvert-Lewin looks a little bit like that. So hopefully he can find some shooting boots, but I think overall in his career he's only got about 50 goals in 250 appearances. It's not amazing by any stretch. So we're going to have to hope that there is a player in there that you know, can start finding the net. And then Lucas Mecha, you know, again, a bit similar to Calvert-Lewin in the sense that he's not prolific, but what I would say with Mecha is that he does provide a physical presence up front, fairly quick, you know, for a well-built fella like he is. Certainly comfortable on the ball, takes a good penalty, if we assume that wasn't a one-off. But again, Mecha's had his injury history in the past. So, I mean, you can ignore the 4-4-2. We're obviously not going to play 4-4-2. I'll just put that in there because we've basically got 11 different players that didn't feature for Leeds last season. So I thought, well, I'll just put them in a 4-4-2 for the sake of argument. Do I think that we will ever have this 11 on the pitch all at the same time at any point in the season? Difficult to say at this stage. Too early. You know, we've seen Harrison come on and deputise at left back before now. We've seen him on the left wing as well, replacing Nonto as a substitute. I mean, again, you know, the only players that have in this lineup that have had good game time so far really have been Perry, Gudmundsson and Stack. The next best then is probably Mecha in terms of game time. Longstaff's had one start, but then, you know, the rest haven't started a Premier League match yet. So it's very, very early days. This is obviously a fair chunk of the squad now. After this 11, you've got goalkeeping wise, you've got Darlow and you've got Keynes, but the club didn't get Meslier off the books, and I find that so weird. I don't know what the club's playing at with that. They've, you know, I think there is still time for for Ireland to get a loan move possibly. I think the loan window's still open for another week, so maybe they look to get him out on loan at least to get him off the books, because he's not going to get ahead of either Darlow or Perry. And then Cairns is kind of your reliable third choice guy that loves being at the club, and he is one of our own, and if he's ever called into the breach, I'm sure he'll give everything for the cause. Full-backs, obviously it's Bogle and Byram. Centre-backs is obviously Rodan and Strauch. Right wing, you've got Dan James, and seems like Brendan Aronson's kind of backing Dan James up at the minute on the basis that we didn't bring a right winger in. Left wing, Willie Nonto. Centre mid, you've got three. Then you've got Ampadu, Gruev, and Tanaka. And then up front, you've got Joel Pirro. And that is it. That is your, as things stand, that is your, that's your 25-man squad. Is there enough there? Is there enough quality there? I think that certainly in the goalkeeping and defensive departments, I think we're okay. I think we're okay there. Midfield, I think we're slightly light. I think we needed another midfielder. Partially based on the fact that we've been playing 4-3-3 this season, and then technically 4-5-1 in out of possession. And then again on the wings, we like there seems to be a real squad unbalance here, or imbalance. You know what I mean? It's not. We're not in a situation where we've ended up getting 11 new players in. So effectively, one in every position, matching the formation that we're using this season. This is why I've had to put all of the 11 different players here in a 4-4-2. I think we're stupidly lacking up front. I really do. I mean, I hope to God that Metcher and Calvert-Lewin can do the business this season. I really do. And as much as the two of them seem to be good workhorses, there's not the prolific goal scoring material there. There just isn't. And then with Joel Pirro, he's a proven goal scorer at Championship level, but he's not a proven goal scorer at Premier League level. And the step up is massive. So, I really worry. I mean, put it in the comments down below if I'm overreacting here, but I don't feel I am. I don't feel I am. I think we are in a serious problem here. Bearing in mind that Daniel Farke mentioned publicly that he needed attacking reinforcements. And for whatever reason, the 49ers Enterprises have not, they've not been able to, to get anyone. There was talks of Gustavo Hamer and Harry Wilson. These are top-end Championship players, in my opinion. And I hate Wilson's attitude. I don't want him anywhere near Leeds United, quite frankly, after the way that he acted when he was at Derby. Screw that. I don't want that kind of attitude at Leeds United. He'd be a bad apple in the squad, in my opinion. And Farke don't want that kind of player anyway. And then with Hamer, so hot and cold. In terms of his output and end product and things like that, he kind of flatters to deceive in a certain way. It's like, and again, he's proven at the top end of the Championship, but he is unproven in the Premier League, and that ain't the kind of player that's going to help Leeds United. You know, if you look at the players on the screen right now, all of them have come from teams that are playing in their top divisions in their respective countries, or were. You know, so Perry from Lyon, top French division. James Justin last season was playing, all right. Leicester were crap, but he was playing, for a Premier League team. Bornau was playing in the Bundesliga. Biol playing in Serie A. Gudmundsson playing in League One, French League One. Harrison was playing in Premier League, regardless of how bad his loan spell was. He was playing in the Premier League. Stack was playing in the Bundesliga. Longstaff playing in the Premier League. Okafor playing in Serie A. Calvert-Lewin playing in Premier League. Mecha playing in the Bundesliga. These haven't been signed from unestablished teams or from teams in lower rated leagues. We have targeted players that quite recently have been playing in their playing in a top division, in one of Europe's top 5 leagues. So the club have targeted in the right areas, but they just haven't brought in the quality that's required up front, and this was something that Farke spoke out about. He said he needed help getting players in up top. And I said at the start of the summer transfer window, I said we need a brand new startable 11. So if we're going 4-3-3, you need players that can adapt to that 4-3-3. If we're playing 4-5-1, you need players that can adapt to that. 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, whatever the formation is, you need to get a brand new 11 that suits whatever formation you're going to go into the new season. And that hasn't happened. That's failed. That experiment has gone. It has not been completed. There are players out there. I sounded out players in probably about half a dozen videos that I've done now that the club could have targeted, and for whatever reason, it either hasn't happened, hasn't even been linked, with some of them. And I mean, I don't know whether, the club could well have scouted them. They could well have looked at them and thought, you know what, despite what they've done last season, that it won't work. But again, Parag Marath has basically come out as well and said that Leeds will spend every available penny to them. And that has worked out at roughly £103 million in transfer fees. So is that really what Leeds United had available? You look at what teams like Ipswich spent last season. They spent over £150 million. We have ended up being just shy of £50 million short on what they spent last season, and they got relegated without any hope at all, really. You can look at any of the 6 teams that came down over the last 2 seasons. Look at what they've spent. All of them spent more than certainly most of them spent more than what we've spent for this summer transfer window. And I'm not saying that spending money guarantees quality, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why players are made available for free transfer, like your Metchers, like your Calvert-Lewins. And then you've got players like Okafor and Stack and Biol and Perry that have cost quite a bit of money. So I don't know, but again, Sunderland splashed out, 30 million on that Senegalese midfielder that we were linked with. They'll have spent God knows what on wages for Xhaka. Same with Burnley spending God knows how much wage on Kyle Walker. These players won't be on peanuts. These players will be earning top dollar, and you know, from Leeds' point of view, I mean, out of all these, I reckon maybe Calvert-Lewin. I reckon it could be Calvert-Lewin and Longstaff that are on the most wages out of this group. Could be wrong. I honestly don't know. But, you know, none of this 11 are going to be on lower wages. That's a guarantee. They're all going to be on Premier League level wages. Anywhere between, I reckon, anywhere between 50 and 100 grand per week. Every single one of these players on this 11. You know, we released Bamford on a mutual consent, which means that they'll have had to pay out whatever was remaining on his contract, and he was on around 65 to 70 grand a week. So Leeds have had to pay him certainly a proportion of what was remaining. In terms of actual physical sales, we've only sold Greenwood for about £3 million. You know, there might have been some small loan fees that we've incorporated into the loans that have exited the club. So like your Josephs and your Verbers and Gallart and, you know, just to name a handful. You know, there's several players that have left on loan. But again, you know, for each of those loans that we've let out, you're not going to have brought in more than £1 million of a loan fee, you know, per player. That ain't going to have happened. Not a chance. So, you know, hello Kirby. So yeah, that's where it's at, folks. This is the squad depth that we've got now. You know, Ramazani again to Valencia. He's another one that we've probably got a small loan fee for. But yeah, you know, I mean, you know, there was a lot of talk about Ramazani and, you know, should we have let him go, and the fact that the likes of Harrison and Aronson, you know, have ended up staying and things like that. You know, as opposed to Ramazani going. My only thought on that is that Farke possibly believes that Ramazani doesn't track back as successfully as the likes of Harrison and Aronson do when they play. You look at the likes of James and Nonto, they do track back. Nonto didn't do as much. You know, he's adapted his game there, so you've got to say fair play to Willie Nonto there. James, I think, has always tracked back because he's got that pace. He can get up and down that pitch like a bloody rocket when he's fully fit. But yeah, we just lack so much quality in the final third, and this is a massive worry. Massive worry. I don't know whether the club will look to target the loan market or the free transfer market. You know, between now and the end of the international break. You know, there's players like Brownhill, for example. He's 29-year-old, had a good GNA last season in the Championship, but again, there's been a lot of talk saying that he would demand anywhere up to 100 grand a week, which he's nowhere near worth, and also that he would demand 100 grand up front as a. That was probably, if he was wanting 100 grand a week, he was probably wanting like £1 million to sign on to a club, which again is ludicrous. If that's Brownhill's mindset, he's going to have to hold out for a move to the Saudi Pro League or a Qatarian team, because there's no buggering team around here that's going to pay that for him, and certainly Leeds won't. So either Brownhill drops his demands or he goes to the Middle East. There's been talk of Ziyech, but I mean he's over 30 now, isn't he? The club won't target a player that's over 30 year old. I mean, he's got Premier League experience. He had a reasonable stint at Chelsea, didn't he? I think it was Chelsea that Ziyech was there. And again, he's a player that could cover, maybe both the 10 position and possibly the right wing. Maybe. I don't know a lot about him. And again, there's probably other free transfers out there that maybe the club could look at, or maybe players that now that the transfer window is shut, that maybe certain players will be made available for loan now, so that they get game time, or that clubs can get them off the wage books. So maybe that's where Leeds will look to target over these next week or two, whilst the international break's on. Leeds have to be very productive now. They've got to be very, very productive over this next week and a bit, because it's game on now. There's the January window, but we're very much like deadline day. We very rarely have a good January, and we very rarely have a good summer deadline day. There's the odd one or two exceptions, but it's really deflating. When you get your manager coming out saying that he needs more attacking reinforcements and then doesn't get any, and then when you get the owners saying that they are, or chairman coming out saying that the club will spend every available penny to push the limits of PSR, and that seemingly doesn't happen. And the worst part of all of this, folks, the worst part is that the club have not put out any statement up to the point of recording. As far as I'm aware, I haven't checked the website and I haven't had a notification come through on my phone. There hasn't been any statement from the Leeds ownership about why the club has not been able to bring in the targets that they must have had. And they must have had targets. They must have done. The only one that we know for sure that was a failure was Pajau. We know that for a fact. Alright, but everyone else that's been mentioned, I don't think there's been that much of a strong enough link to suggest that Leeds were anywhere near getting any of the other targets, any of the other rumoured players. So with this in mind, it's poor, and I think at the very least, I think the fans deserve an explanation from Parag Marath, or even Jed York. He's the owner. Parag Marath is the chairman. Daniel Farker will definitely be asked on the next press conference as to what went on. And I think the club will have told Daniel to basically not say anything. Or it'll be stuff that will be said under the questions under embargo, of which the fans are never made privy to. Which really freaking pees me off, I ain't gonna lie. So, I hope that something happens between now and our next Premier League match, but we are now relying on loans and free transfers. And I hope that the club can do something for Illan Meslier, because he's clearly not in the plans now, and they see Darlow as the backup. Mellier's 25, he'll be 26 later this year, I think. He needs to be playing games. He's going to have to go almost half a season before he can get a permanent transfer out of the club. The club might be able to loan him out at this point, I don't know. Well, the only other option for Illan is that he gets his contract terminated, but they've already done that with Bamford. They're not going to do that with Meslier as well. Surely not. So I'm really confused as to what's happened with the Illan Meslier situation there. Really confused. Hold on, what's this? Alright. It was a post from Leeds United, but it's not anything of any transfer interest, put it that way. Right folks, up to the half hour mark, I'm going to leave it there. This has just basically been a bit of a follow-up video from the video that I did last night. Just in the hope that something might have come through, you know, maybe the day after the window shut, but there's been nothing. So, big thank you for watching folks. Sorry that again it's a little negative. I would love to be bringing you some positive news about Leeds United, but at the moment there's not a lot. So, you know, hopefully the squad from last season and these 11 on screen right now can do the business for us, because it is down to them now, at the very least until January. Then we'll see what happens. But yeah, big thank you for watching. Do please give the video a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Big thank you to the recent new subscribers to the channel as well. I really appreciate the support. And I'll be with you again very soon with some more either video game or Leeds United content. In the meantime, have a good one. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.